Hello, everyone. Welcome to Chai Chat and Community. As you know, we had a good holiday period, and this is the first show of 2022. Not that we did not have a show before, but the first show of 2022 where I am the host back again. I'm so excited to have Ashwin on board today and would love to see how our conversation help every one of us who are interested in looking for adaptability, transferable skills, and have so many questions about studying in Melbourne and working in Australia. So, first, before speaking about the topic, let me give the board to Ashwin, who might be able to speak about himself better than me, about his journey and how he landed from India to Melbourne and now still working in Calcutta from Melbourne.
Okay, hey everyone. So my name is Ashwin, and I am from Calcutta, which is also called the City of Joy. I moved to Melbourne in 2017 for my bachelor's in science at UniMel, and it was a very exciting journey. I mean, just the journey to Melbourne was exciting, but also filled with ups and downs. I remember when my grades came out, there were a bunch of colleges or slash universities that sent the rejection letters, but there was also a bunch that sent yeses. And at one point, I just had to, sit with all those letters and be like, okay, which one should I go for? Should I go to London? Should I go to Melbourne or Canberra because I had ANU or New South Wales? And it was such a difficult decision. But then I feel what actually brought me to Melbourne was its diversity. I felt that Melbourne's diversity was unparalleled, and I believe that after being in Melbourne for 3 years, so Melbourne I went for its diversity, for its really cool weather, and of course Unimel's reputation as well. But those 3 years in Melbourne, they were those three and a half years in Melbourne, they were probably the best years of my life. And yeah, I mean, I don't think anything will ever come close to what I felt and what I experienced in Melbourne. I grew a lot. I was a very shy kid before Melbourne. I would get these anxiety attacks when I had to talk to a stranger. So ordering at a restaurant or asking someone for directions on the street, something of that sort. I would not be able to do that at all. So like if I was at a restaurant, it would have to be my parents that ordered for me. I just would not and could not talk to strangers. But when I moved to Melbourne, of course, I didn't have any sort of family support or even friends support initially. So I had to learn to grow out of my shell, learn to expand my boundaries and my comfort zone. So now I'm someone who doesn't mind talking to strangers. I can hit up people easily, and I'm good at making friends now. And I think all of that is because of the skills that I picked up in Melbourne. I feel it was a place that actually helped me become the person I am today. Of course, you can pick up
Yeah,
skills in any place, but
yeah,
then Melbourne was just this place that did wonders to me. And well,
yeah.
now, like you said, I have a job here in Calcutta. I mean, it's a job for an Australian company, but I'm sitting here in Calcutta doing work from home.
Yeah, perfect. And I think, Ashwin, whatever you said is so relatable. Like, I remember 3 years back when I had to make a decision, like 4 years back when I had to make a decision on which country to be chosen upon. My parents couldn't be comforted in any way because they wanted me to stay in a place where they have someone, like any relative staying there or any
Hmm.
or guardian who can take care of me. And I was always a fan of Australia, not because of the cricket, but also because of how Australia has always been portrayed in a Bollywood movie. So
Yeah.
I remember they wanted me to go to Canada because I think in India, everyone somewhere or other would have any connection in Canada. So
Especially if you're from the north.
yeah, somewhere like if you do not have a connection, I think you should be checking your ration card, your Aadhaar card, and your DNAs. Like there would definitely be.
Yeah.
So I remember like the only reason that comforted them was about like for Melbourne and particularly Australia is the world's ranking of Melbourne of being the
Hmm.
world's most livable city for like years now, and I think this year they did not, but they're still in top 3. So I think that
Hmm.
was the only primary reason that my father specifically, who is so protective of me, let me come here, because he knows how Melbourne is a city of not only about multiculturalism but a game show of how you can really blossom yourself in the best version. So, Ashwin, when you say about your journey in Melbourne, so tell us about how did you come? Like, did you come as student in Melbourne, or did you
Yep.
always have a work visa?
I came here on a student visa. I went to Melbourne on a student visa in 2017. Yep.
And you did your undergrad bachelor's from University of Melbourne.
Yep, that's right. So I did a Bachelor of Science and I majored in pharmacology.
Wow, looks so fancy. Like I think this would be was this a course that was very intensive, or was it a workable with how you were living in Melbourne?
It was quite intensive. There were days when I just didn't want to continue anymore, but it was something that was interesting. And I think because it was interesting, I could manage the workload. I remember I changed my major 3 times in Melbourne. So I started off with a biotechnology major, then I moved to microbiome and immunology. And then when even that didn't work for me, I just didn't like that at all. And then I moved to
Yeah,
pharmacology in
yeah,
my third year. And every time I changed my majors, I would call up my parents and I told them, I'm changing my major. And they're like, why? What are you doing? Why have we sent you there? Like, we sent you there to do biotechnology, just do that. But, it's this thing of, I mean, I'm glad that I was able to change majors, because if I had been stuck in biotechnology, I don't think I would have been a happy person. Of course, I would have struggled to get through uni
yeah.
in even 10 years. I mean, the fact that I completed my degree with pharmacology is testament to the fact that biotechnology probably wasn't made for me.
Definitely. I think one thing that you have very much made it very clear is about flexibility that the country gives you. Like
Yeah,
coming from one major, you can just jump in another. And I think our parents would be so much in shock, like how indecisive we could be. But I think this is the chance that the university and the city gives you in order to explore yourself. It is all right. If you start from one station, you can jump to the other one. I think
exactly.
I did my master's of marketing, and my professors and my curriculum made it very very clear that during one semester take your time to understand the course. If you do not like, that's all right, the credit points would still transfer and you can
Hmm.
still change your specialization. Luckily
Yep.
I like marketing itself, but I have seen so many of people coming from engineering background doing marketing, realizing it's not their shoe, jumping to IT then. So I love the cross connection that happens over here. I think that's what makes it strong.
Yep.
Like the ability to challenge yourself and also have the support from the department.
Hmm.
So, coming on that, Ashwin, I have been going through a lot of these articles that say that employers today, they not only choose the best candidates, but they are also looking for graduates or person who have gained international experience by studying
Hmm.
abroad. So while you were in India, do you really think your experience in Melbourne was one of the reason you were able to capped up, you were able to gain such skills that you are able to use it in your job?
Oh yeah, definitely. Of course, employers today, they want candidates that not only have a good grade, but they also want candidates who, are sort of have a wide approach to things. You don't want someone who's just a textbook, who's good with textbooks but isn't good with any other thing. So my experience in Calcutta, when I came back here in January 2020. Of course, I started looking for jobs. I started my own business, but I also started looking for jobs, just to support my business, kind of, because my business was a side hustle. So I started looking for jobs, and a lot of employers, potential employers, they were very impressed with the fact that I was coming from Uni Mel, and that I had these skills and whatnot. So, but the thing is, because I hadn't graduated yet, a lot of companies just would not take a chance on me. So I realized, there's no point hunting Indian companies. Let's try hunting for Australian companies, because when COVID hit, everyone was working from home. So it didn't matter that I was in Calcutta or, wherever I was. It just mattered that I had a laptop and a Wi-Fi connection. It didn't matter where I was.
That's such a great point, Ashwin. I think in 2022, all you need, apart from you wearing pajama, is just laptop and Wi-Fi.
Yep.
And what about Ashwin? Like when you talk about certain skills, so
Hmm.
maybe in your fingertips, what are the key skills that you see in yourself that you could develop during Melbourne, like your time in
Okay.
Melbourne?
So some skills that I developed were leadership. Then there was communication, adaptability was one huge thing, and project management. So, I mean, these are skills that you would require in just about any job or just about any business you go into. And I think Melbourne gave me that opportunity, both, Melbourne, the city, as well as Melbourne University. They gave me that chance to actually, hone these skills and develop these skills, which is why I believe I am where I am today.
Yeah. So how were you able to develop or inculcate these?
Most of these were through volunteering. And look, I know a lot of people think that, volunteering is a waste of your time because you don't get paid any money. Um, but I think volunteering is an investment in yourself and your future self. I don't think it's free labor. I think it's an investment in yourself. And look, if you're volunteering, you need to set boundaries. Of course, if someone's asking you to work, 12, 16 hours a day as a volunteer, then that's probably, they are, exploiting you. That's not volunteering, then that's free labor. But
Hmm.
I volunteered every day at the university for 3 to 4 hours in the mornings before my classes. So my parents were happy because I wasn't sacrificing on classes. I was happy because I was making friends and I was picking up skills, and just everyone was happy. I think adaptability, I inculcated adaptability because, well, of course, I moved from India to Australia, which is a huge change. India and Australia are very, very alike. Culture, weather, language, food, just about everything, So, of course, if you don't adapt, you won't survive. That's one thing that I sort of, believe in. So, adaptability was, of course, the fact that I moved to Australia, but then also universities are a very fast changing environment. So if you're working at the university or if you're volunteering somewhere, things can and do change at at the drop of a hat. So you need to adapt, you need to be quick on your feet. And of course, if you do all of those, leadership and communication sort of, they're sort of bundled together. So
Hmm.
if you're a good communicator, chances are you will also be a good leader. If you're a good,
Hmm.
if you're good at adapting to certain situations, chances are again you'll be a good leader. So it's like this, like it's like a package where all of these are combined. But project management, that solely came from volunteering, and I volunteered extensively at the university. I mean, people started recognizing my face just because I was everywhere.
Wow, that's such a sweet note. I think one thing that really happened with me was I realized how Australian accent was so different from the accent that we had in India as well.
Hmm.
So for the first few classes where would see my local professors speaking, and that was a time where we had offline classes. So when I
Yep.
would see them I would start making notes very quickly because I know I would not be able to register that accent till the time I've not started writing. And it took me time, like a good semester time, to really understand their true culture and the true roots. I think
Yep.
one thing that we really suffer from that culture shock is somehow it is hard to muster the courage to
Hmm.
relearn whatever we have already learned through. There was a lot of issues I remember having through the communication, because in India I know there's a lot of also having a lot of cultural diversity, but at the end of the day the roots remain the same. But coming to Australia, I realized that I'm not only talking to a person who's always living in Australia, but maybe someone from Europe, someone from Middle East, or someone from China itself. So
Hmm.
that was a great experience of patience, trying to understand what the other person say, and how your non-verbal cues really
Mm,
affect you. You tend to really understand the unheard or unspoken language, and you
exactly.
try to be more empathetic with the other person. I think we never really gave a lot of so much of efforts and time to understand the other person while speaking back in while I was studying, but this comes so handy in our life.
Yep.
One thing that I also realized was that even even a good international education should enable students to start developing transferable skills, and it can only happen if you immersed yourself completely. Like I
Hmm.
know talked about the shell, and I understand how with the online era we had difficulty, like the students who came after the COVID had difficulty, but students who are coming now has a great advantage on that. Like the more they really volunteer, as you said, the more they really understand the culture, and the more they can really, come out of the comfort zone they had always created for themselves. And Ashwin, when you say about like going back to India and realizing that there might be a restriction. So when you were working from India, how would you manage the time difference that would come along the way?
Okay, so time difference was a struggle initially, but I think I was a bit prepared because I had a semester of classes left. So in 2020, I took a leave of absence because I kept waiting for borders to reopen. I wanted to go back to Melbourne. I took a leave of absence for 2020, but in 21, I was like, okay, you know what? Borders aren't opening anytime soon. Let's get down to studying, even if it's on Zoom. I can't help it. And because Melbourne, most lectures start around 9 a.m. So 9 a.m. in Melbourne is approximately 3:30 a.m., 4 a.m. In India. And I started missing lectures because I was like, you know what, everything is recorded. I don't care. But then, of course, attending live lectures is a whole different, ballpark to, watching recorded lectures. So I was like, okay, you know what, let's try to fix a schedule. I'll wake up at 4 a.m. each day. I don't mind, but I'll also, try to go to bed early because I was someone who picked up really bad habits during all those lockdowns, during those never-ending lockdowns. I started, gaming, and most of my friends, they would game at night after, college, after work, whatever. So I wanted to game with them, but then I realized, I also need to go to university, which is at like 4 a.m. India time. So that was a challenge. But then at work, I think it just got better. I will not say it was easy. Managing time zones, be it India to Australia, which is 5.5 hours, or India and US, which is basically day and night, it will never be easy. But I will say that it does get easy over time. The first few days, the first few weeks, you will feel like a zombie. You will feel as if, wherever you sit or wherever you lay down, you will want to, just go to sleep. But um, I feel the time zone thing, it gets easier over time. And once you actually, and the thing is, when you're doing something that interests you, when you're doing something that you like, time zone it doesn't stay a barrier anymore. So yeah, that's how I adapted to the time zone difference. My company today that I work in, most of our meetings happen at 7 a.m. my time. And even though they are like, okay, Ashwin, we don't want you to wake up at 7 a.m., that's not healthy. Like, don't worry, I go to bed early. I don't mind waking up early because I'm loving what I'm doing. If this was some company where I didn't love what I was doing, I would probably want to sleep in and start work around 9 a.m., like a normal ish time.
I think one point that we have very much recognized from your conversation is how the multiculturalism had taught you to be so agile and flexible, not
Mm-hmm.
only because of the time difference, but also being so in control to what you want and how you are able to achieve it. So now that you have taken a decision, you'll be so empowered if you would be taking that steps. So
Mm-hmm.
Ashwin, did you ever realize that you are stuck between the two poles, like you're not even in Melbourne, and in India also you're losing out some stuffs like with the time difference and working out?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it always felt like I was in this middle sort of place where
Yeah, like
I wasn't
yeah, yeah,
exactly, but I wasn't completely in India or completely in
yeah,
Australia.
yeah.
Of course, because I was lacking the physical aspect of studying or working in Australia, I didn't. There was this social connection that I was missing out on. There was, of course, all those experiences that come only when you're physically present. I was missing out on those. But the fact that I was waking up at 3 4 a.m. in India meant that I was also missing out on a lot of social aspects here. I stopped meeting with friends after lockdowns ended. I stopped meeting with friends because I just couldn't handle that. They didn't want to meet me at like 11 a.m. or something because that was too early. And not a lot of places that like a cool places, they don't open up that early. They open up towards like the evening. And I just could not do evenings. Like I could manage to do Friday and Saturday evenings, but then I would be so tired from university, I just could not manage it anymore. So that was one thing. I definitely felt I was stuck somewhere in the middle. But now I feel I have much better boundaries and I have a company that respects my time. So I'm like, okay, I feel more connected to Australia, and I feel I have a life in India as well.
Yeah, true sense. Ashwin, there's a question from Chris, and I think a very important one is that how have Indian firms, companies, R&Ds open up to students about the international degree, and if there's
Mhm.
any stiff competition between the local students one. So, what do you have to say on that?
Okay, so first of all, great question, Chris.
Yeah.
So I feel Indian companies, R&Ds, organizations, they were a bit hesitant to accept, international students before COVID. But after COVID, a lot of Indian students who'd gone abroad, they came back either because the degree ended or because the cost of living is of course much lower in India than any other country abroad. So a lot of Indian students came back, and when because it's almost been two 2 years since the pandemic started, I think Indian organizations were sort of forced to rethink their approach. They couldn't just hire local talent anymore. They did have to also look at international students and international workers. And like I said, earlier, I think the only thing you need for work or for study right now is a laptop and a Wi-Fi connection. I mean, you could study at. I'm in Calcutta right now. You're in Australia, but we could both study at, I don't know, the Imperial College of London, if we wanted to, because as long as we have a laptop and Wi-Fi, we can study anywhere. We can work anywhere. So I think, and I with competition, I feel I wouldn't call it a stiff competition. I mean, okay, the job market is bad.
Mm.
There aren't a lot of jobs, but of course there are many applicants. But if you don't want that stiff competition, I think you need to set yourself apart.
Hmm.
Yeah, just
I mean,
grades will not matter. I mean, you could get 99.9% grades, but that is not going to help you if you do not have an all-round development.
yes, truly agree that. I think from my point of view, when when I had landed up to a job, but before that, while I was searching for it, I think there would be lots of questions about how I can prove my skills. But one thing that I've seen back in India also, and even in Australia, is with the globalization that's happening and assets going in and out from west to east, and now I see a lot of people working from one place and staying in their homeland itself. At least there is no question about if you are from the local country itself for getting the
Hmm.
job. I think
Yeah.
one of the questions that really came up to my interview rounds is proving my ability of embracing the culture. And I think the only thing I could say is that living 3 years in Melbourne, I don't think I really need to prove how adaptable I am to any of the culture now. I think in
Exactly.
Australia, since it's, if you see, there is no one culture that we follow in
Hmm.
Australia. And even in Australia, there is not a dominant one too. Like every proportion of things roam around and things change within street and street. So I do agree on that, Ashwin. And I think even in India also, the degree has a great value because they really understand how you have been living all by yourself. Like you are a
Hmm.
self starter. I think our journey is a very much benchmark journey to
Yeah.
show how in like you have been living alone without any support, embracing yourself to all the emotional competencies, mental competencies, and now you're still surviving and you hair
Hmm.
back in order to use those skills to the current job. So we, like Chris also oh, we have one question from Aishi as well. Thanks for the question, Aishi. So she asks, how did you volunteer in Australian organizations from home? Are there any remote opportunities available and any website or app? And the same questions for jobs. So what she also says is that she has heard that organization might prefer students with visa requirement of Australian citizenship or PR.
Hmm.
So how do you overcome that?
Okay, another great question. Thanks,
I
Aishi.
think again, great
Um,
question.
yeah. Okay, so let's start with volunteering. When I came back home, of course, I was really disconnected from the whole Melbourne community. I was, of course, connected to my friends, but then there was no other way for me to meet new people or upskill. So what I started was I think I started being active on LinkedIn,
Okay.
and then I think it was a paid ad or something. Study Melbourne popped up on my feed, And I was like, okay,
Okay.
I have never heard of them, even though I was in Melbourne for 3 years.
Yeah,
I've never
yeah,
heard of them. So I came across Study Melbourne and I started following them. And they had a bunch of events. They were doing emotional wellness, they were doing LinkedIn, reviews, they were doing employability skills. There was so many webinars and events across, just to upskill you, just to make you like a student leader. And I realized, okay, you know what? And of course, most, if not all of these events for free. So I thought, sitting in India, I'm connecting to a Melbourne organization, and I'm learning so much. Let's just immerse myself into the whole thing. So I started following Study Melbourne, and then I started attending the events, and I met people. I met a lot of people from different organizations, and I connected with them on LinkedIn. And I mean, the thing is, okay, so they could see that I was attending all of the events, I was communicating, I was engaging with them, and they thought, okay, maybe Ashwin has something that we can use. So Study Melbourne. So in the last 2 years, Study Melbourne has reached out for volunteering opportunities. Study Australia has reached out. A bunch of organizations that these people partner with, they have reached out. Again, I feel one thing that you really need to focus on is actually connecting with the right people. So if you connect with the right people, so in Study Melbourne, I connected with all those people in the top. So I connected with those people because I attended so many events. I loved those people, and I was like, okay, you know what, let's take a shot. If they say no, if they don't connect with me, it's not the end of the world, of course. Let's connect with them and let's go with it. If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And I think the fact that I put myself out there, they appreciated that, and they had loads of volunteering opportunities. I just had to sort of select one, and I got it. For jobs, again the same thing. So Aishi, you are right, a lot of organizations do prefer local students, or ones that have are legally allowed to work in Australia. But the thing is, when COVID hit, all those legal sort of red tape was cut off. I remember the first thing that international students, they were relieved to hear is that there was no 40-hour work limit for during the fortnight, so international students could work more. A
Mm.
bunch of bureaucratic red tape was removed. So organizations started getting a bit more friendly towards international workers. But the only thing is, if you hire a local worker, I mean, if anyone hires a local worker, there's less paperwork. But again,
Mm.
you can definitely get a job for an Australian company sitting in India, like I did. You just have to put yourself out there, and you have to convince them that you are much better than any local person that they could find.
Wow,
Yep.
that's a very nice saying, Ashwin. I think if I do have anything other thing apart from what you have already covered, is while I was looking for volunteering opportunities, there's a lot of remote one, a lot of
Yep.
organization who want people. Maybe just for engagement content, or maybe just there'll be a lot of Zoom team meetings, a lot of sessions that will not only help you build yourself, but also give you a chance to prove who you are. So I think Indian Care is one of them. There's also an organization known as Volunteer Victoria. There is
Yep.
also one organization known as Volunteer Melbourne, DPCD, if I'm not wrong. So all you need to do is pick a cause, and you'll get affiliated organization based on that. And doing from remote, I don't think it's still much more cherishing. It is very much a good refresher, and it will give you the same experience as what you could have gone as in person.
Hmm.
So as of job, I would say, like you, as you mentioned, Ashwin, you would know LinkedIn better than me, but I think no other platform can be better than what LinkedIn is. So you
Yep.
can customize your own feeds based on the location, based on experience, and based on your current experience, and how you can connect to recruiters would be amazing. Saying that, I would like to also share, the current job I got is was from LinkedIn itself, and
Hmm.
that was a job that was not even posted on the page. So what I did was randomly ask the HR if there is or could be any opportunity ahead in that organization, and to my luck there was, and they were not really putting up to on LinkedIn or anywhere else. So
Yep.
that's how I got up into it. So I think it's a connection that really takes you further. And that's what the best thing I learned in Australia is about networking, building very strong affiliated relationships, and you would definitely be able to succeed in all your ways.
Exactly.
Uh, Also, I do you really think? Oh, thanks for that, Aishi. So, do you think, as Chris also asked, there is also a phenomena about Indian brain drain that's really happening?
I am a bit divided on this because if you'd asked me this question before COVID, I would have said 100%. Um, right now, I would say it's a bit of a 50-50 kind of thing because a lot of Indians are coming back. It's either because, just to stay with their families, because look, a lot of Indian students or Indian workers, they leave India after, maybe when they are 20, 25, 30 years of age, which means their parents are above 50. A lot of those Indians are coming back maybe because of the grandparents or because their parents are alone and they just want to take care and not be separated from them in a COVID sort of world. But there is definitely a brain drain, and I think a lot of it has to do with how um, see,
The
the thing
culture.
is, yeah, the culture as well. And the fact is, if you've gone abroad to study, you've spent thousands of dollars on rent, accommodation, on university, but then you come back to India and you're not valued. Just because there's so many applicants, you're not valued. You get a measly salary, and then you have to work like 9 to 7 or something. You feel undervalued, but then you go abroad, mm, and that can be anywhere, Melbourne, New York, London, wherever. You go abroad and then suddenly you feel valued. You go to a city which of course is expensive, but then you also feel valued. You feel respected, and your qualifications are seen very in an objective light, in a proper light. And then you realize, maybe I should stay here and maybe I should make a life here. And
Yes.
I mean, I think this thing has been happening for years. And look, it's not a surprise. If we take Sundar Pichai as an example, he was in IIT Kharagpur, which is probably like 100 kilometers from my house. He was in IIT Kharagpur, but then today he's the CEO of Google. He moved away from India, and and look, I of course I won't know the exact reason, but it was probably because he felt his talents would be a waste here. If Sundar Pichai had stayed in India, he wouldn't have been the CEO of Google today.
Right,
So I
right.
think that's the thing.
I couldn't agree anymore, but I think I also do have a but I'm little inclined towards brain drain. Like I'm definitely saying it does happen and it would continue to happen till the time the Indian corporate culture, till the time it does not improve. I think the
Yeah,
companies over there think employee not as in part of the organization but just as a product. Like I
exactly.
think the way you treat your clients, if you could treat it to your employees as well, there won't be there will be more of retention, more of people wanting to come back and staying in India. I think working over here for last quite a few months, and I would say over a year, what I really realized is, as what you said about respect, as you said about the opportunities, like I have not felt so much confident in the job itself. Like even I know I might some would be the day where I'm very very gloomy. I know my manager would really come to me, check on with it, and there'll be times when she would ask me to take a day off. Like no matter how
Hmm.
the load work would be, or how much uh, very pushback our deadlines would be. But what she would always say is like it's always better to be disappointed towards the client. Like we can still manage that, but we can't manage you being disappointed just because you are overburdened or you
Hmm.
are really having a hard time on that. So
Yeah,
I think that's very great, and that's why I feel
exactly.
it is so amazing to work outside, like outside India.
Hmm.
But again, we do have a mixed response for it. But
Yeah.
Ashwin, as I say, like I also have very much inclination towards brain drain. Like I think the country really needs another decade to really improve the situation, or
Hmm.
else the asset and talents are going back.
Exactly, exactly.
Oh, that's my nanny. So I'm
Oh.
so so that's how she comes to show, and she would
Hmm.
leave a comment that would make me blush for a moment, and it would take me a good strong moment to grip myself and come back to the show.
No,
So
it's
Ashwin,
very wholesome that your nani is here.
Yeah. I think one thing that I also saw my maternals and paternals, especially my nanny, is how she feels very proud the fact that you are self-sufficient, you are so independent, living in a different country. So there is a huge much of encouragement from that side. So I
Yep.
know even if I, at the end of the day, I am feeling very, very gloomy on the day behind, or if I want to come back to India forever, I know there'll be a lot of encouragement from their end, because all they
Hmm.
really hope is you are at the end of the day happy, and they have known
Exactly.
that you have been staying alone all by yourself. So like this, it couldn't be coming on the best side that, oh, she also sending hearts. So it could be coming at the best side that being alone, you are definitely turning your world around by just working on your ambitions. So Ashwin,
Exactly.
on that note, oh, we do have another question from Chris. Thanks for being so engaging, Chris, by the way. So, would you like to know your thoughts about the various expensive English testing skills that we asked to sit for? I think this is one thing that I really do not like about Australia. Like, openly speaking,
Hmm.
that talking about the English proficiency exam, like we in India, we had all our education for 16 years in English. And when we came here, we had to still ask or present our English scores in terms of
Exactly.
IELTS or PTE. And I
Hmm.
know that's how it is like a cash cow. That's how they are earning, and how there's also another revenue stream, but it's
Hmm.
definitely not justified. Like even processing for my visa and staying here for another 3 years, they still asked me to present my English proficiency exam scores. Like
Yep.
seriously, how am I even staying in 3 years? So
Hmm.
one thing that I would say that I true agree that these type of things is really not very much considerable in terms of why do that happen. But what are your thoughts about that, Ashwin?
Okay, so expensive, of course, because look, these are private companies. The IELTS is administered by the British Council. If my memory serves me correct, the British Council is a private organization. I'm not sure who administers the PTE, but I'm sure there are a bunch of organizations, and all of them are private. So if these tests were government run, I am pretty sure the cost would be much, much lower than they are right now. So first of all, it's a private test, and because they basically have a monopoly. So if Australia needs IELTS or TOEFL, you need to get those. There's no, alternate exam that you can give. So these companies are like, okay, you know what? We have a monopoly here. We can definitely charge hundreds of dollars. It doesn't bother us. So there's that thing. Of course, they're very expensive, and which means they're not accessible for a lot of people. Are they justified? Again, I have a bit of a mixed response here. Of course, if you look in Anjali's case, because you've been in Melbourne for 3 years, and then if you want to renew your visa, asking for an English test, then that is stupidity. That does not make any sense, because how did you survive in Australia if you didn't know any English? But if you're coming from a country, again, see, the thing is, I know that, okay, let's take a country like Australia, for example. You don't need an English test if you come from certain countries, and those are
Hmm.
mainly English speaking countries. But the thing is, India has the most number of English speakers in the world.
Hmm.
So that logic doesn't stick around. Um, I came from a school where English was the mode of instruction. You came from a school where English was the mode of instruction, but even then we had to prove that. So it doesn't really make sense that way either. If you were in a, let's say a Hindi medium school or a vernacular school, I guess it would make sense that they want to know how our English is, but we came from an English medium school, so it doesn't really make sense that way. But I guess, look, I wouldn't say that this requirement, it doesn't come from care for students. It doesn't there's no thought that, oh, if they don't know English, they'll face struggles. It's just to sort of
Hmm.
filter out certain people. A lot of it has to do because they don't want. Again, look, I'll sound terrible if someone. I'll probably sound terrible when I say this, but I know that this is true. um, Restrictions are much tougher and much harder for people from developing countries like India.
True.
India is still
True.
not seen as a developed country. We still have a lot of time and a lot of years to get there. But I believe that these requirements will not be there once we start getting
Definitely.
viewed as a developed country.
Definitely. Definitely. I think that is a very great point on that, Ashwin. So, Ashwin, like, did you also have to go through the English proficiency exam? I'm so sure before coming over here.
Okay, so my English requirements were waived off because I did the IB in India. So my English requirements were waived off. They did ask me for my visa. They did ask for it on my visa, and it was delayed. So the thing is, when I was applying, I was told that your English requirements are waived off, and I applied. But then it got stuck in processing, and I had no idea why. So I had to call up, and then they were like, "Oh, you don't have an English test." So it took me some convincing, but I did explain to them that I did the IB board here, so I don't need to give the test. Which again, look, it doesn't make sense. No matter what board you're doing in India, all of those exams are conducted in English. So again, it
Hmm.
doesn't make sense. But it's also it's just a lot of. At the end, I feel like you said, it boils down to money.
Hmm. True.
Yeah.
And so, Chris, this, oh my God, that's a question pointed to me. So, you talked about being independent in Australia. Definitely. Does that independence hit back once you get back to the country? I think that's so much true. I was talking to my dad in recent times, and he might be just faffing around how if I had any suitor that I have decided on myself, or does he want me, like, want him to just find for one. So I was just maybe asking in a very, very candid moment on who do you think is a good person for me. So he had this list of things about good financial statements and everything. And all I was just asking was if there is a suitor or there's a, how we call a rishta coming for me,
Hmm.
would you even ask him if he knows how to cook? So my dad got a little stumbled, like, why would I even ask about if he cooks? So I just told him, like, do you think we might get a question that if I can cook? So he's like, yes, but and that's the answer is yes. So I just had a word. I was just very, very shocked. And I let my father know that things would go on a two-way side. Like things that I would be expected to know is what I also expect the other person to know.
Hmm.
And then that came in my mind how, how even um, boys coming from India over here are still more independent to what the notion has been staying in India itself. Like I
Yep.
see my brother just being like a king, wanting everything to be served on his table,
Hmm.
expects some things to only be done by my mother or might
Yep.
be for by his wife. I think that's what is a really a shock for me, because I think staying here in Australia, I've seen my mindset very much evolving around these things about feminism, about equal roles and responsibilities, and how the house should really be managed. I think
Hmm.
this is how there'll be one thing that would really hit me. And I know I'll be having a very hard time finding the boy who might match up to the mentality that we have it now.
Yep.
And apart from that, with independence, I think you're right, Chris. With my ability of taking decisions so easily in Australia, I think I would be really stumbling if I go back to India. Like, a very basic question as like if it's 11, I would just maybe step out if I'm wanting to feel that. But I think I would still think twice or even ask my parents about if I could go out at night, and that too
Hmm.
staying in there. So that's where the independence would really hit me.
Yep. And just to add on to that, because I'm someone who came back from Australia to India, that independence, of course, I when I told my extended family that I can cook, I can clean, I can do all my things on my own, I don't need someone. They were like, "Oh, chalo, let's get you married now because uh,
That's
because
so
you can
much
cook,
of
you can
hurt,
clean."
right?
And I'm like, is that the only is that the only barrier to getting married? Like, is that the only requirement? Because I want financial stability. I want to be something. I don't want to be married off my dad's money because, well, no, that's not how
Yeah,
it should happen. And
right.
like you said, you saw your friends in India or your brother being treated as just being very dependent. That's something I've seen my friends in India do as well. So they have the dad's car to go to
Yeah,
roam around. They have the dad's money to splurge. But when you go to a foreign country, you have to live alone, and you have to be careful of your finances as well. And that's something that I struggled with initially, but then things just started getting better because I realized I was here for the long run. It wasn't as if I was here for 15 days as a tourist and I couldn't afford to just splurge on hotels and restaurants and this and that.
So
So
true.
that
So
thing came in, and I believe today I'm a better, much better financial planner. Like I can plan my own finances properly. 5 years ago, I couldn't. I probably
I
wouldn't
think
be
we
able to
have
buy
not
anything
even
properly.
thought about it. Like, why
Exactly,
do staying in India, all you are doing is living off your parents' finances and also
exactly,
letting your parents think about finance for yourself. I
exactly.
think they are the much more of the planners than we being in shows of them, right?
Yep, exactly.
I think, even in India, like the fact that independence is the fact that, okay, now you're independent, okay, now you're financially stable, now get married. And I was like,
Hmm.
was that just the end goal? Like, just staying in there for 3 years, really investing so much, and now it's time to getting that return, really reaping all the benefits, struggles that you had, is to just get married and start the learning phase back again. So
Hmm.
there is much more of individuality that happens in Australia, I think, than of India.
Yep.
But on that note, Chris, do ask again a very important question about if IITs or NITs or IIMs, importantly, if they are as productive as what it used to be 10 years ago.
If by productive you mean are they churning out the same number of engineers and managers and whatever, then yeah, they are probably more productive. But I feel IITs or NITs, IIMs, they should not be your end goal, even if you're in India, because I have had some friends who've been to IIM Bombay, IIM Kharagpur, and NIT Trichy, or IIMA. And the thing that I've heard from all of those is, when they were in school, there was this hype, there was this thing that if you got into IIT or IIM, life was set. You'd come out of IIT or IIM with like a 1 crore package in hand. You drive like the biggest and most expensive cars. You would have a luxurious bungalow and whatnot. I mean, these dreams were sold to you through movies. Bollywood is like a big, Bollywood is a dream, of course. It sells you dreams. And a lot of my friends, they worked hard, very hard. In they went to Kota as well. They stayed away from family for 2 3 years just to get into IIT. But after they've graduated, they've realized that IIT's okay. Well, I can't really comment on the quality of teaching because I haven't been there. But if I compare it to others, I would not say that any IIT is better than Unimel, for example, or any other university around the world. IIT is sure premier institution in the country because lakhs of people apply for it and only a few hundred get into it. So of course, premier institution. But then a lot of institutions are premier institutions. The fact that you get lakhs of applicants and you only admit a few, that does not make you premier. What how what do your students feel like? Are they satisfied? What are they doing with their lives after they graduate? How easy is it for a student to access help? I think those are some parameters that IITs, IIMs, they need to address, rather than building this huge brand image of, oh, if you come to IIT Kharagpur or if you come to IIM Ahmedabad, life is set for you. No, that it doesn't happen that way. You need to
Right.
do work on your own, and IIT is should not be your end goal. Go to IIT. I'm not saying don't go to IITs. Go to IIT if you want, but don't make that your be all and end all.
Right. So true, Ashwin. Like yesterday, like I guess a month ago, I was talking to my friend. So there was a cat result that had
Hmm.
released a month back only, and he was telling me how he couldn't get IIM, and now he thinks he can't get into any college, and that what really saddens me. It's because
Hmm.
over the years, I think the facility has not been able to equip itself for more such universities, and if they know with every year there'll be more students applying for it, more students enrolling for it, and more interest generating, like what is really the harm of just cutting off the quota and maybe capping it over? Like, this is
Exactly.
what I really do not get. And I think that what is the mentality of somehow for the MBA school, since they are the premier one, as what you said.
Hmm.
But this is how, since the supply is so less, the demand gets so overhyped,
Yep.
and the other colleges, what people think is might not be good enough for them too,
Mm,
since they have been rejected from the top ones too.
yep. And again, look, this has a lot to do with society as well. Of course,
Yeah.
when I when I was looking at options to study abroad, there were these institutions that I categorize as premier institutions. and there were other institutions that are categorized as, meh. If I get into it, okay, whatever, that's like my last option. But after being in Melbourne for 3 years, after meeting people from all around the world, I've realized that I was so wrong, and that us Indians or South Asians, we think of education from a very narrow sort of perspective. And of course, I mean, there are a lot of issues behind it, and 1 hour is not enough to discuss them. But society really needs to change its outlook on
Yes.
education at least.
Yes, definitely. And I think the change really starts from within itself. So whenever I really hear people really crying upon not securing that university or one thing, I can only tell them that do not let just one paper result or one university bestows to what you really are. Like not even one score or one exam can really prove the worth of what you can really achieve.
Exactly.
So about that, Ashwin, since we are really coming to the end of the show,
Hmm.
what advice do you really want to give it to, but to people who might be coming to Australia for either working or studying, or to existing people who have just arrived?
So if you've just arrived in Australia, or if you're planning to move to Australia, one thing I would say is never hesitate to ask for help. I think there was this quote from Harry Potter, from one of the Harry Potter movies, where Dumbledore says, "Help will always be given to those at Hogwarts who ask for it," and that is something that's true in Australia as well. I wouldn't say it's true for all countries, but Australia definitely. Be it a random person on the streets, be it some huge professor, be it a tutor, be it whoever. I mean, whoever at your university, at your TAFE, on the streets, in the shops, doesn't matter. If you need help, if you want help, just ask for it. People are so kind, and people are so open to helping. I think, I mean, again, this asking for help thing, of course, it may seem as a sign of weakness, again, because of this whole culture thing where you're supposed to be independent and strong and this and that. But there is no shame in asking for help. It just makes you a better person, because not only are your needs getting fulfilled, but also you're getting exposed to another person's views or thoughts or opinions. So definitely ask for help. And the second thing is, I would say, try to expand your comfort zone as much as possible, because if you do that, opportunities will keep popping up for you. But if you stay in your comfort zone, like I was here in India, if I when I moved to Australia, if I'd stayed in my comfort zone, I wouldn't be doing this, I wouldn't be in this conversation with you, because then I wouldn't have made my LinkedIn, I wouldn't have been that active, I wouldn't have all these opportunities come up, I wouldn't have you reaching out to me. None of those would have happened if I had stayed in my comfort zone. So definitely try to get out and try to explore as much as possible. And I don't mean physically. Try to explore Melbourne or Australia or wherever, even through LinkedIn or even through your universities. Okay, you don't have to physically move around. That's one thing I would say.
That's very very great thing to say to anyone who's just starting up and have no idea whatsoever. I think from my side I would just that have actually believed in my life a lot is never being complacent. So I think just continually keep on challenging yourself, start a new goal, start something new, learn a new skill, or even the job that if you think you're getting too comfortable from it, get out of it. There are a lot of opportunities. All they are looking for is people for that right skills. So start
Exactly.
developing that skills, start being very very multi active based on problem solving, collaboration, teamwork, and I'm so sure you can get to any of the jobs that you require.
Exactly. All of these skills matter. It doesn't matter if you come from the best university in the world or the worst university. Okay, it doesn't matter if your resume is 1 pages long or 10 pages long. It doesn't matter. All that matters, I feel, is what skills you have and what you bring to the table. If you're a good
Definitely.
communicator, if you're a good team worker, leader, problem solver, all of those things.
Definitely. And Ashwin, now I think we do not have any further questions. So, as we come to the end of the show, I would again like to thank Ashwin for joining us into this beautiful conversation we had for an hour. And I'm so sure people had a good engagement, a good learning out of it. And as we see, Ashley has already replied to it. Thank you so much.
Thank
And I
you so
should
much
just,
for being here.
yeah, it was lovely to have you, Ashwin, today. Thanks for that.
Thank you so much for having me.